everybody! This week we're going to listen to a Bible story I bet a lot of you haven't heard before. Who remembers any stories about Elijah? We don't hear him too often, but this week we're going to listen to a story about when Elijah brought the people of Israel back to worshiping God, and then also he brought rain when he prayed to God to get the rain at the end of the story. But we're going to make a rain stick to help us remember this story. So go ahead and listen to the story. Ahab was a very bad king, and his wife Jezebel was even worse. She was a worshiper of Baal, a pagan god of fire. God was very angry with King Ahab and Jezebel for leading people astray and sent a prophet named Elijah with a message. As surely as the Lord, God of Israel lives, the God whom I worship and serve, there will be no rain during the next few years until I give the word. King Ahab and Jezebel were furious. God told Elijah to get out of there quick and hid him near a stream. Drink from the stream and eat what the ravens bring you, for I have commanded them to bring you food. So Elijah came up near the stream and drank from it. Ravens brought him bread and meat every morning and every evening. But because there was no rainfall in the land, the brook that Elijah was drinking from began to dry up. Then the Lord said to Elijah, "Go and live in the city. There is a widow there who will feed you." So Elijah went to the city. When Elijah arrived at the city gate, he saw a widow gathering sticks and asked her to bring him some water and some bread. She explained that she only had enough oil and flour for one last meal for her and her son. Elijah promised her, "The Lord our God says there will always be flour in your bin and oil into your jar until he allows it to rain again." And from then on, no matter how much oil and flour the widow used, she always had enough. Some time later, the widow's son got very sick, and then he died. The widow cried out to Elijah, "Why did this happen? Did you come here to punish me for my sins?" "Give me your son," Elijah said. Then he laid the boy out on the bed in the upper room. Elijah began to pray over the boy. 3 times he did this, and on the 3rd time the boy's life returned to him. Elijah brought the boy downstairs and gave him to his mother. The woman fell on her knees and said, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and he speaks through you." The drought in Israel was in its 3rd year. People were starving and dying of thirst. God told Elijah, "The time for the drought is nearing its end. Go and present yourself to King Ahab." So Elijah headed back into Israel. In the meantime, King Ahab had sent a man called Obadiah out to search the pastures for water for his horses. While he was searching, he found Elijah. "Go and tell King Ahab that I am here," Elijah told him. King Ahab went out to meet Elijah. "So Israel's great troublemaker has returned," Ahab said. God had another message for Elijah to give the disobedient king. "Go and bring the prophets of Baal on top of the mountain. Then summon all the people of Israel. It's time for a contest of the gods." So the messengers sent out to summon the priests of the false gods and the people of Israel to gather on the mountain. So the false prophets and a vast crowd gathered on the mountain in the north of Israel. Elijah addressed the large crowd of onlookers. "How long will you waver between 2 gods? You cannot be loyal to both. Today is the day you will choose one or the other. If Baal is God, choose him. But if the one true God of Israel is God, then worship only him." Then, at God's command, Elijah began to direct the setup for the contest. "Bring me 2 bulls and some wood. The prophets of Baal get first choice. Let them choose a bull, prepare it, and lay it on the wood of their altar." Elijah continued, "I will prepare the other bull on the other altar. Then call on the name of your God. I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the one true God." And all the people agreed. So the prophets of Baal prepared the bull and began to call on the name of Baal all morning, shouting, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no answer. They began to dance wildly and chant around the altar they had made, but there was not a single hint of a reply. By afternoon, Elijah started to have fun with the situation and began to taunt the prophets. "I think you have to call a little louder." So they shouted louder, thinking it would get Baal's attention, but there was still nothing. After the prophets of Baal spent all morning and all afternoon trying to get their God to answer them, there was no response. The false prophets collapsed on the ground in exhaustion. It was now Elijah's turn. Elijah took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel, to repair the altar of God. Then he dug a trench around the altar. He had the bull laid on the wood on the altar and requested that 4 large jars of water be poured over the bull, the wood, and the altar. So they did as Elijah requested. Then he told them to do it a second time, and they did. Finally he asked for a third drenching, and they did it again. By this time the trenches that were dug around the altar were overflowing. The people looked on in disbelief as the altar was soaked in water. How could this altar be set on fire? It was evening by now, and Elijah went to the altar and prayed, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel. I am your servant, and I have done all that you have commanded. O Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you are the one true God." Immediately the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned the bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust, even licked up all the water in the trench. The people were in awe. They began to cry out, "The Lord is God! The Lord is God!" They chased after the false prophets of Baal and sent them away. Elijah turned to Ahab. "It hasn't rained for 3 years, but I hear a mighty rainstorm coming." Then he went up to the mountain with his servant to pray for rain. 6 times as he prayed, he sent his servant out to look over the sea and report what he saw. 6 times he returned to say there was not a cloud in the sky. Elisha kept praying. The 7th time the servant went and looked. He returned to report, "I see a cloud rising from the sea, but it is no larger than a man's hand." "Hurry to Ahab," Elijah told his servant, "and tell him to climb into his chariot and race back home. If he doesn't hurry, the rain will stop you." Ahab quickly left for his home. The winds were kicking up and the skies were getting darker and darker. Ahab his horses pulling his chariot as fast as they could go. "Faster, faster," he shouted. Heavy rain began to fall. Now the Lord had gave special strength to Elijah. He tucked his cloak into his belt and ran faster than the horses, pulling Ahab's chariot. Elijah beat Ahab to the entrance of the city.
So what did we learn from this story? So Elijah brought the people back to worshiping God. Who should we always be trying to put number 1 in our lives? That's right, God. So God should always be the most important thing in our lives. Sometimes that's really hard, especially as you grow older. But it's really important to keep God first. God will always love you, no matter what happens. So God brought that drought because the people had turned away from him. And he didn't bring the rain back until the people had returned to worshiping God after Elijah prayed really hard for it. So that's one way God rewards us for keeping him first in our lives. He helps us. He gave the people the rain. He might help bring good things to you if you keep loving God. So that's why it's important to love God and try to keep God first in your life. So let's start to work on our craft. For this craft, you need a piece of paper. You might want some colored paper. It'll make it a little more exciting. You're going to want tape, a marker, a stapler, and some rice. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to roll your paper into a tube. Once you do that, we're going to want to tape it so it'll stay in the tube. So you're going to want to use several pieces of tape because you don't want the rice to come spilling out of your rain stick. Then you're going to take one end of your rain stick and you're going to fold it over like this. Once you do that, you're going to take your stapler And you're going to put 2 or 3 staples in it, because this is what's going to hold your rice in on the ends. After you've done that, you're going to take your rice and you're going to pour all of it into your paper tube. Be careful when you're doing that. You don't want to spill it everywhere. Once you're done doing that, you're going to take the other end of your paper tube and you want to make sure you fold it the same way you folded the other side. And then you're going to go ahead and staple that one with probably 3 staples as well. So this is our rain stick. So now you get to decorate it. So there's a lot of things you could choose to put on your rain stick. I want to put on mine the Lord brings rain. Because that's what happened in our story. Elisha prayed really hard for rain at the end, and it finally came to end that really long drought once the people began to worship God again. And then I'm going to put some clouds with raindrops coming off of it on both sides. And that's all the decorating I'm going to do on mine. But you can decorate it however you want, with lots of color and a lot of decoration. So here's a few more raindrops on mine. And I'll put a couple more clouds. You can decorate the back too. So this is our craft. This is our rain stick. So we can use our rain stick to make a rain sound. When you do this over and over again, doesn't it kind of sound like the rain beating down on your roof? So this is why it's called a rain stick. So this is your craft for this week. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you on Sunday. Bye!